So here's San Mateo. We can see that this particular tax sale has 102 tax defaulted properties. So quite a few properties. I don't need the email San Mateo. And we can see all of the different online lists that are available. Now, going through these online lists can take some time. You can see it can take some time just as we have to go through each one of them. And this is what's called a batch. This is what's called a batch of tax deeds. And many times counties will sell them in batches in some of the online auctions. So in tax lien certificates that you purchase online and in some of the tax deed sales, they're going to sell them in batches. And essentially that just means that these 10 tax deeds are starting at 8 o'clock a.m. The auction's going to start at 8, and then the next batch is going to start at 9, and the batch after that's going to start at 10. So it's nothing to get too confused about. It's just really a group of tax deeds that are going to sell at that time. And we can see that this also includes some different photos on the property. So we can see looks like some type of structure property here. Let's go ahead and click on it. So this particular property has a $27,000 minimum bid amount. Now, in looking at it, it really looks pretty nice. Let's go down and see if we can find some more information about it. So we have an address for the property right here. We can see it's located in San Francisco. We can also click here for a parcel image, where we've got an image of the property. Looks like really a pretty nice little home. We can click on the parcel map as well. See where the property is located within the subdivision. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take this information. We're going to do a Google search, and then we're going to check the property value as well. So here's the property located right here. As we're looking at this photo right here, it's probably just down this little street, and it was taken right here. So really, overall, looks like a pretty nice little property in a good area. And when we're looking at a opening bid amount of $27,000, I'm sure that this property is going to have a pretty good assessed value. Let's go ahead and check that out. Okay, wow. I wasn't expecting that. We're looking at assessed value here of $1.2 million. And so, I would imagine based off the value of this property, we have 37 days. The property owner has 37 days to pay that $27,000 before they lose the property. But would this be a good investment? Yes. Looking this over, this would be a great investment. You're looking at a property that's worth $1.2 million and has an opening bid for $27,000. Now, usually, with a property that's valued that high, you're going to have a higher minimum bid. So, a property that's valued at $1 million may have a $100,000 bid. But this is an example of a great property, a very, very nice property. Looks like we have another property here we can take a look at. Here's another single-family home. Here's one with a $72,000 value. That's a little interesting. For some reason, they don't have the address listed here, which is unusual. So what we need to do to search this address is take that parcel number, go into the county records, and do some additional research on it. We may also be able to find the address by downloading the Excel list. Let's go ahead and pull up that Excel list, and we'll take a look at all of them real quickly. Come on. Okay. So here's the list of the tax sale that's taking place. We can see the property address is listed right here, the city, any additional information. And I guess one thing that they may be adding is they may be adding this additional information as the auction date gets closer. Okay, answer a couple of these questions real quick, just because we've got quite a few. This is a great question, real great question. Do you have a general rule of thumb you follow when you bid in auctions, up to 60% of the assessed market value? That's a great question. When it comes to tax deed investing, we'll usually say stick between the 20 to 40% of the property's value range, unless it's really a great property. I mean, in some markets, you may have to bid it up to 50 or 60% to acquire some of the best properties within that area. But usually those are areas where the property is so nice that you can turn around and sell it quickly or flip it quickly and make a pretty great profit. For example, maybe it's one of these homes that in California that's worth $1 million, but you end up bidding the property up to $500,000. Well, if you bid up to $500,000, you're paying 50%, but there's still $500,000 left of profit available. Now, if we were to take that on the other side and say we're looking at a property that's worth, a single-family home that's worth $40,000, well, you might not want to bid that property all the way at $20,000 because that only gives you $20,000 of room for profit, and there may be some expense that goes into that, which is going to eat that profit away. And so every investment's going to be a little bit different. My kind of rule is the higher value of the property, the higher you can essentially bid it up in value as far as the percentage rating. So as the property gets higher in value, maybe you can go from 20% to 30% to 40%. And if it's in a great market, you may have to bid 50 or 60% to get the very best properties. But there's also properties that are going to sell for 10 or 15 or 20%. So if you can stay between that 10 to 30%. That's really kind of that sweet spot because you're going to have a lot of room to turn around and make profit. On nicer properties, you can go up a little bit higher than that, go up into the 40-50% range, because those are going to be more expensive properties, which is going to give you extra room for profit, if that makes sense. Let's see. Okay, there's a couple other questions that I think we're going to answer as we go through. So we can see the different tax sale list here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on some of these properties. Yeah, this list is actually missing a lot of information. It's probably because we're looking at the list. They didn't have this list out even as of yesterday, and so they don't have the assessed value. They don't have a lot of information that they normally would. So I would imagine that this information will be included as the auction gets closer. But if it's not, that means that there may be less people researching the property, which gives us a better chance of having less competition at the auction. So we can see this property here. Let's look at some of these ones with addresses. We can see, it's a $27,000 minimum bid. This may be the property we looked at. Let me see. Alrighty. Yep. So we've looked at this property. It's has a value of $1.2 million with a $27,000 opening bid. Here's another property with a $34,000 opening bid. Let's go ahead and click on that. Okay, so we can see, looks like a pretty nice single-family home here. Opening bid amount, $34,000. We have the address of the property down here. We can go ahead and click on that parcel image to get a better look of the property. And let's see what this property is worth. Obviously, it's not going to be worth what this first property we looked at was because it's not a custom single-family home up on the hillside. But, within San Mateo, and it's not surprising because the real estate there is so crazy as far as property values, we're looking at a $750,000 estimated value. It's just over 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 3-bath. And so overall, you know, if we're looking at a $34,000 bid on a $700,000 property, that's a great bid to value ratio. Now, one thing I want to be clear about is these properties really have a pretty low minimum bid versus the assessed value. Part of that probably has to do with the real estate market within this area, and so I don't want you to think that all properties are going to be this high of a discrepancy between what the opening bid is versus what the assessed value is. And we'll look at some other in Florida, but you know, these are great examples of tax deeds. Now, that may start at $34,000, and maybe it's going to bid up to $200,000. We're not quite sure, depending on, you know, the competition at the auction and which of these properties goes to sell. But as we go through and start looking at this list, we may see many properties on here that we want to take into consideration, and as the auction gets closer, do additional due diligence on. So let's go ahead and click on the property below that as well. So we can see this property is not a single-family home, but some type of commercial building. You can see there's an auto body shop right here. Now, one thing I would probably do with this particular property, and we don't really have the time to go through it tonight, is I would go to the county website, and I would search this parcel number. I'd search to see what the assessed value is on this property, the size of the property, the size of the lot. I'd find all that information out, but there's probably a good chance that this property has a pretty high value. Based on the property that we just looked at, I would think that it's probably worth anywhere between $300,000 to $600,000, maybe even more. I'm not quite sure, but when you're looking at that opening bid amount, you know, we're really looking at a pretty good value. Here's another property we can see with a $57,000 opening bid. And we can see that this looks like some type of custom home, single-family home right there. And so what we're going to do with this property is just kind of go through that same process that we went through. And we're going to see what this property is valued on Zillow. So we can see this property has a value of $581,000, and it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, about 780 square feet. Now, one thing we can see is that this property, and we can see it down here, this property at one time was for sale. It may be currently for sale, and they may be trying to sell it to pay off this $57,000 in property taxes so they don't lose their property. But one of the things that they have done is they've given us additional pictures to look at. So that's going to give us a good indication of the condition of the property. We can go through, see pictures of the property. We can see it's a small 2-bedroom, 1-bath home, and that helps give us a better idea. And looking at the value based on the opening bid amount, you know, we're looking at about a 10% bid to value ratio. So as an estimated value about $581,000, has about a $57,000 opening bid. That's about 10%. Now, so this property, if it goes to auction, may sell at 10%. It may go up to 50%. It really just depends on the market. But the thing about tax deed investing is it's really the cheapest way I've ever seen to acquire real estate. I've never seen a better way to acquire real estate for a smaller percentage of its value. Some areas that may be 10% of its value. Some areas that may be 50% of its value. But either way, you're going to be able to acquire real estate for cheaper than any other method you could do or find purchasing real estate within that area. We see a property below that for another $32,000. Now this property here is some type of land, most likely. Let's go ahead and look at it quick, and so we can see that there's, in this particular picture, it looks like it just may be a hillside. So we're going to go ahead and use Google Earth and see if we can get a better idea of what it is. So we can see the property looks to be located right here in the backyards. I'm not quite sure what this is here. Let's go ahead and look at the street view. So I don't believe it's this home right here. It might be this large tract of land. Would probably do some more research, go to the county, and review that to find out. But we can see that there's, properties that start at $1,900 here and go up to value of, here's one at 1 million, about 70,000. And so, here's a property that has an opening bid of over $1 million. It's 7.37 acres, and I would bet if we would do some research on this property, we can check the parcel map quick, but it's probably a large, 8-acre piece within a valuable portion of real estate. So maybe it's this piece of real estate right here, and we can see this subdivision here. And so in looking at this, well, you might be able to subdivide this property and build, 20 home lots in here valued at $400,000 a piece. And so this very well could be a valuable piece of real estate, which justifies its $1 million opening bid amount. So I want to go through and research some other auctions. You can see all of these great properties. I mean, this is probably a nice single-family home. Here's a property with only a $2,500 opening bid, but has an address. We can see, 3723, 24. There's all kinds of great properties, and I'm sure as the auction gets closer, we'll do some additional due diligence and some review some of the different properties that are coming up.
On the right.
But this is an example of a great California tax sale.
My car.
LA is going to have similar type of properties coming up for auction, and so it doesn't matter where you're looking to invest. There's usually going to be some pretty great properties to get started with or to bid on at auction. Now, we're primarily going through tax deed and talking about how to research with tax deed, but tax lien is really just going to be the same process, but it's going to be a little bit easier. As you go through and figure out the value on the property, for example, if I was looking at this little 2-bedroom home and has an estimated value of $58,000, and I was purchasing a tax lien on the property that was guaranteeing me 18% interest rate, and I was purchasing it for $10,000, I would have no problem investing in this tax lien certificate. I wouldn't need to drive out and see the property. I wouldn't need to do anything like that because I'm just purchasing a tax lien on the property with the foreclosure right. And so chances are this person's going to pay off my tax lien before I acquire the property. But if I did acquire the property for $10,000, would it be a great investment? Sure. And so with tax lien investing, you're not going to need to do the same level of due diligence that you are with tax deed investing. But with tax lien investing, you just need to make sure the property has value. If the property has value and your lien to value ratio is good as far as the lien cost that you're paying versus the cost of the property, it's going to be a great tax lien certificate. If you purchase a tax lien that's the property's worth $500 and it's a lot out in the middle of Arizona that has nothing but rattlesnakes and sagebrush, that's not be a good tax lien certificate. But if you purchase a tax lien in Mesa, Arizona on a building lot that has $50,000, that's going to be a good tax lien certificate because the property has some type of value, it has use, somebody could build on that property. And so that's really what we're looking for with both tax lien and tax deed investing. But with tax deed investing, you need to look at it from a real estate view. You're actually going to be acquiring the property. And so because you're acquiring the property, you're going to do more due diligence and make sure it's going to be a great investment because you're going to need an exit strategy right now. With a tax lien certificate, you're going to be waiting 6 months, a year, 2 years before you make back your money and your interest rate return. Otherwise, you can force the tax lien into a foreclosure and then acquire the property that way. So let's go ahead and let's look at a couple of other auctions that are coming up. Where is my webinar? Okay. Let's look at a couple of Florida auctions quickly. Okay, so here's Brevard County, Florida. We can see in July they have an auction on the 23rd. They're going to be auctioning 36 properties. They started with 48, and now they're down to 36. If we click on August, we can see that they don't have their August list up yet. So if we were to go ahead and click on this auction date, we're going to pull up the auction list. Now, as we look at this auction list, we're going to be looking for this information, and we're kind of going to be making a quick decision on each one of these tax liens. Some of these tax deeds we're not even going to look at. We're not even going to research, just based off the opening bid amount and that assessed value. Also, we're going to look for things like a property address. A property address means that you can drive by it. It means, it could be a building lot, it could be a structure, but you can at least go to the property. If there's no address, it could be some type of vacant land. Now, that doesn't mean that vacant land doesn't have value, but being a brand new investor, you want to stick to property that are easier to research. So this property here has an opening bid of $4,000, but only has assessed value of $21,000. Now, that's kind of right there at that price point that I would look at it, because the property may be worth $40,000, and I'm going to see exactly what it is. And so, if this was $10,000 and $20,000, I probably wouldn't look at it, but, about $5,000 to $21,000, it's worth just taking a quick look at. So I'm just going to click on the county record, and that's going to tell me all the information I need if I want to do some additional due diligence. So I can see the site address right here, and I can see down here below that there's some type of building. It was built in 1963. I can see it's just about 1,000 square feet. So I can see that this building has some type of structure on it. I can also see that it sold back in 2006 for $82,000. It also looks like it sold a couple of times in 2012, and in 2010, 2009 for small amounts, which is probably some type of a family sale where they sold it within the family. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and look at that site address quick, and let's pull it up and see what the property is. So you see this property looks to be probably this property right here. Let's see. Either way, it looks like it probably is going to need some type of cleanup and work. It may be structurally sound, looks like some type of mobile home unit. Let's go ahead and check out the value real quick and see what Zillow estimates the value at. Okay, so we can see a couple of different things here. First of all, we can see that the property is a 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 1,000 square feet. We can see that Zillow estimates it at $57,000. We can also see down here below that the owner is trying to sell the property. They're trying to sell this property before it goes to the deed sale. And so what they're doing is they're selling it for $29,900 cash. So if that $29,900 cash, would have to do some more research, but based on the estimated value, this is probably a pretty good deal. Also, the fact that he wants cash on, he's probably looking for some type of investor to sell it quickly. We can see some of the information. The owner's made some improvements, brand new carpet, new construction, 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath, partially fenced yard. So there's actually probably a good chance that the property is in better condition than we see it right now, just based on the fact that he's doing, they're doing work on it. Also, the fact that he's selling it for the bottom line. So this $29,000, that's probably the bottom line price that this property would sell for. And so at a $5,000 investment, could you make a profit on this property? Yeah. You're not going to become rich making a profit, but you could turn around and sell this property and make, 10, 20 grand on the property, probably pretty easy. And so even though this isn't a very high investment property, there is probably room to make a decent profit on it if you were able to get it at the right price. And that's really the key with tax deed investing, is don't get so emotionally involved that you're going to bid up the price of the property to where it's not going to be as profitable for you. It's hard sometimes. I'm telling you, as somebody who's done it and has worked with students, it's hard not to get emotionally attached or involved with the property. But as an investor, we can't be emotionally attached. We need to make sure the numbers work. So if I determine that this property would bottom line sell for $30,000, and I've set my limit at $8,000, I'm not going to go above $8,000 or whatever that number is. Because there's always going to be another auction. And I'd rather have you lose a property than overpay for a property. So this next property we see that has an address, but it has a small assessed value. I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking at that. $3,700, 37. See, here's a property has an opening bid of $84,000, has an assessed value of $331. I actually looked at this property earlier today, and it's a mobile home park. It's not in a great condition, a mobile home park, but it's some type of mobile home park. We can see this property here has an $80,000 opening bid and a $275,000 assessed value. Let's go ahead and click on that property quickly. We can see that there's a structure down here below. Oh, this one might be part of the mobile home park as well. Mobile homes, 26 units. So let's just quickly look at it. We won't spend a lot of time on it. So we can see this particular, I think that it almost looks like it's abandoned, but it may not be. But so we can see it's this mobile home park right here. Okay, so as we go through this list, we can see, a $2,300 opening bid worth $24,000. That's a pretty small tax deed amount. Let's go ahead and look and see what this is. This is a pretty low dollar deed. I mean, if you can acquire a tax deed for $2,000 to $3,000, it's usually going to be a. With this property, they're not giving us a street view, so we can't get a better look at it. Here's one with a $32,000 opening value with a $78,000. Now that one's got a pretty high opening bid amount versus the property value. So what we'll do with this property is we'll see what the market is. Let's see what that market value is. Let's see, the property is located right here. It looks like it's pretty close to the beach. And it looks like it's going to be this property right here. If we were to click on the county records, we can see some additional information about it. You take that address and see what Zillow estimates the value is. And so this is just really the process you're going to go through. And really, guys, this is something you can do just to get some practice. Go start to review an online auction and just start going through and looking at property. As you go through these properties, it's going to give you a better idea of the process and what property values are and how to read county records. And so, it's fun to go through and look at some upcoming auctions, even if you don't plan on investing there. You don't need to spend 10 hours doing it, but, if you've got an extra half an hour, go through and look at upcoming auctions. As you do this over and over, it's going to become easier to research property. So this property has an estimated value of about $100,000. So at $100,000, that $32,000, that puts it a little bit high at, maybe 30% of the bid to value ratio, but that still has plenty of good room for profit if you were able to get it for that price. Here's a property with a lower opening bid, $7,000 opening bid, has an assessed value of $96,000. We're to click on that, we can see that it looks like 2 stories, built in 2008, 1,600 square feet, and we can see that it's a condo. Tuscany Center condo. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just kind of go through that same process, click on the address, and we're going to search this property first on Google Earth. Because what I want to determine is this a condo, like a home condo, a condo that somebody's going to live in, or is this some type of commercial condo? And we can see down here below that it looks to be some type of commercial condo. Let's go ahead and click on the street view. And yeah, it's going to be one of these buildings within this strip mall. And so, that would look like overall a great investment. This strip mall seems to be in pretty good shape. We can see that it has some shops in there, a mattress barn, some type of computer shop, but there's also some missing or some shops that aren't open, and that may be one of them. And so, in looking at a tax sale with a $7,000 opening bid on the assessed value of $100,000, I'll bet this property may be worth, 120 to 150. That's just a guess, but usually the assessed value is going to be lower. We can see that it's about 1,600 square feet. So would this be a safe investment? Well, it looks like it would be a pretty good investment. Even in bidding this up, it starts at $7,000, billing it for $20,000 or $30,000. You'd still have a pretty good room for profit on a real nice property. Here's another property with a $5,000 opening bid and a $71,000 assessed value. So we're just going to search that again, see what it pulls up, and it looks like it pulls up a little single-family home. We can see this family home is pretty close to the water. And, really looks like a small, nice little clean home. Now, down here below, I can see that this picture was taken in 2011. So this is a real old picture. And we'll want to take that into consideration if we're bidding on this property. I'd recommend having somebody go out and take a current picture of it so that you have a better idea. Sometimes you'll find these are 2015. Just really depends on when the photo was taken. When that Google car was driving around the street taking all the pictures, and after they've done an area, then they usually start to update it. And so maybe in 6 months, a year from now, this will be updated with a newer picture. But at this time, it looks not to be a bad little property. What we're also going to do is just see what the property is valued at. Okay, let me see if I can go through and answer a few more of these questions. For the person the screen is not moving, I apologize. It seems to be moving for everyone else. So I'm not quite sure what the situation is. We will have the replay line available. Okay, so here's another property. And as I talked about, this is part of the reason I like to use Zillow. A lot of investors kind of like to bag on it sometimes, but I can really find a lot of information by using it. I can see here that this property was at one time for sale and maybe currently for sale. Now, of course, why are they trying to sell it? They're trying to get their property. They're trying to pay their property taxes before they lose the property. So we can see that this property, as is, listed price for $41,000. They're really trying to move this property quickly. We can see it has an estimated value of $148,000. So the estimate is quite a bit higher, and they're probably trying to sell this as is at $41,000. Now we can go ahead and click on some of these pictures and get a better idea of the property itself. So that's, at least this is going to tell us something. It says, they're listing it at $41,000. Well, if they're selling it as is at $41,000, we probably want to use those values when we consider what we're going to pay for the property. So, at $5,000, would it be a good investment? Well, at $40,000, there's still plenty of room to make profit. There's still room within there, and so at $5,000, you'd probably be a good investment. But if you're going up to $20,000, we can't count on that $71,000 assessed value, and usually the assessed value is low. So this kind of worries me why they're asking so little for the property. But we'll take that into consideration. Here's another one with a $5,000 opening bid, has a $90,000 assessed value. So we see this bedroom. This property is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, valued about $116,000. can also go ahead and do the Google view of it to get a better idea of what the property is. And we see this property right here. Let's go ahead and got to erase these quickly. Let's go ahead and look and see what in the property was built. So that's what I thought, 2007. So it's this newer property right here. This single-family home was built in 2007. Has an estimated value of at $116, and has an opening bid for $5,000. Now that would be a great property that you could look at. It's a newer property. You know, it's only was built 7 years ago. You know, has a high value worth $100,000, and has a low opening bid. So you could start at $5,000, but you could bid that property all the way up to $20,000, $30,000, and still have, you know, a pretty good profit margin. Here's another property, $5,700, has a value of $70,000. Another property, $32,068, $4,083, $198,427. And $299,944. So let's go ahead and look at these last two more expensive properties just for fun. And you know, we're only on page 2, so there's probably still a lot of great properties within this auction that are coming up for sale. So let's go ahead and look at this first property that has an opening bid amount of $198,000. So as we click on that, we can see that this property has an estimated value, assessed value of $427,000. We can see that it was built in 2002, and it was purchased in 2007, the year it was built, for $715,000. We can also see down here below the size of the property. We can see it's 4,431 square feet. See, it's got a fireplace, it's got a pool deck, it's got a spa, and so really we're looking at probably some pretty nice custom single-family home here. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's take that address, and let's do a little research. Okay, so we can see that the property is located at 422 Waterside Drive. And it's this home right here. So really we're looking at a pretty high quality home here. It does have a high opening bid amount, but let's go ahead and check out what the market value is. So the market value on this property is about $773,000. Also want to show you another thing real quick. We can see how this property, you know, this is a little bit older. When this property probably peaked at, or would have peaked in this area around 2005. We can see that this property went down in value through 2000. You know, it went down in value through 2007, had a little bit of an up in 2009, and then went down until really about 2013. And now it's going back up in value. Over the last year, it's went up constantly in value and hasn't went down. So, you know, in November of 2014, this property was worth $700,000, and by this time this year, it's worth $773,000. So this property's gone up in value almost $73,000 over the last year, and that's because the property values in many places in Florida are starting to go up. We can see that, you know, there's the overshot view of the property. It looks to have some type of pool in it. And so overall, at $198,000, this is a good investment. Well, yes, sure, it's a $200,000 property, but you're getting a property, let's just say on the conservative side, it's worth $600,000. You know, there's $400,000. There's almost $500,000 worth of profit that could be had on a property like this. Let's look at this last property as well, this last one on this particular page of the list as well. We can see this one has a $299 $300,000 opening bid amount and has an assessed value of $648,000. And so here looks to be like another custom single-family home. Looks to be a pretty good property. We can see that it has a boat, and if we were to go ahead and go back up to that view, we can see the properties right here. What does it have? It has a boat dock. You know, these are very nice properties. Right there on the waterway has a boat dock. Now let's go ahead and see what this property is valued at on Zillow. Okay, so we're looking at a property that's valued at just over $1 million. It's 458, about 4,500 square feet, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, nice custom single-family home. We can see the overhead view right up here. Has a pool. We can see that it has a boat dock out here as well. Overall, you're looking at a very nice piece of property, a very nice single-family home. And so at $300,000, if it's worth $1 million, that makes a little bit more sense. There's value to be had in this property. And so, we can go through and we could look at many tax lists like this and pick out these good properties. And this is just the same process you're going to go through. Now, once you've determined, okay, here are some properties that fit my estimated price range, fit what I'd like to spend, are in an area that I'm interested in, and as I'm getting closer to the sale, then you're going to go through and start doing some of the additional due diligence that we talked about in some of our other webinars that we talked about in the beginning of this training, about going through and getting current photos of the property, going through and doing additional due diligence, start researching the county records, doing a comparative market analysis on the property, start planning an exit strategy. Are you going to turn around and wholesale the property? Are you looking for rentals? What's your goal? And start narrowing down those decisions as you approach the sale. Then as you get to the sale, you're going to have an idea of exactly what you're willing to spend. You're going to do a comparative market analysis and determine what the value is. So if we were doing a comparative market analysis on this property, I would find which properties in this area, maybe some of these other properties, have sold recently. I'm going to find out what they sold for and compare those properties to the property I'm looking at. Maybe these properties, I'm just saying for numbers' sake, maybe they sold for $100 per square foot. Well, I'd figure out, okay, if the properties in this area are selling for $100 per square foot, my property is, 4,500 square feet, it's going to sell for $450,000. That's what the properties in the area are selling for. And once you know that, it's going to give you a good idea of what you're willing to spend. Because you're going to know, okay, here's what the true value is, here's what it's really worth, or what I could possibly sell the property for, and what am I willing to go up to? Are you willing to go up to 20%? Are you willing to go to 30%? What profit range is going to make this investment worth it to you? And depending on the auction, you may set an opening bid amount that's going to be lower, and maybe the property will sell for higher. You may be right on the mark. That's kind of this process is going through and investing in individual tax sales. The one thing about Florida is they have auctions every single month. Some states may just have auctions once a year. It really just depends on where you're investing. But the key is to go through and find some good properties that fit your investment objective, then do the additional due diligence and follow through the auction. So we can see that, there's quite a few properties here. We're not going to go through and look at some of the rest of them. We can see quite a few. Here's one for $52,000. It has an opening bid for over $2 million. Man, I was done with this one, but I got to look at this one real quick. Okay, so we can see this property sold in 2006 for $5.9 million. I'm trying to see. Okay, now with this particular property, it looks to be land of some sort. We can see it's 217 acres. I wonder if this is the golf course that I talked about last week. I thought they sold that yesterday. Maybe it didn't go to auction after all. Maybe they had to postpone it until this week. Let me check real quick. With some of the students last week, we talked about, oh, no, this was a different property. This is some type of teen mission. So it's this, it's going to be all of this land right here, and it looks like to be like some type of missionary, for like a teen camp, essentially. We went through and looked at the street view last time, and this is a very large property. All these buildings, they're all going to be sold to the tax sale if the property owners don't come up with that $52,000. Now, just to get a different look, I know we're already running out of time. These webinars are supposed to be an hour long, and every time I end up going over. So I appreciate you guys staying with me and allowing me to go over every time. I just end up going through and start looking at these properties, and just want to give you a better idea and just end up talking longer than I'm supposed to. So let's go ahead and look at Leake County real quick, and then we'll call it an evening. Just want to give you some different views as far as property records. So let's go ahead and click on the first auction that's coming up, and we're going to see a lot of this exact same information. Now, in looking at this first property, opening bid amount of $18,000 and assessed value of $5,800, we're not going to spend any time looking at that property. The opening bid amount doesn't justify even looking at it versus that assessed value. Now we can see a property number 2 here has a $4,000 opening bid with a $71,000 assessed value. Well, that piques my interest. I want to find out what that property is. So we're going to go ahead and click on the property, and we can see that this particular county record has photos of the property. So, I'm a little bit worried when I see a tarp covering the property. So I'll definitely do some more research before I forked out the money for this property. But then again, you're only looking at a $5,000 opening bid. The land is worth more than that. But let's go ahead and look for some different properties. So here's a property with a $100,000 opening bid. That's a pretty high opening bid for an assessed value of $181,000. Okay, so we can see this property here looks to be a newer single-family home. We can see it's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, about 1,600 square feet. Oh, it's actually older than I thought it was. It was built in 1973. Now let's go ahead and check out the value and see if the value is there on this property. We can see that it has a very, very high opening bid amount. So we see the estimated on this value is $388,000. So that makes more a better value as far as what that opening bid amount is. I mean, let's say it's only worth even $200,000. At $100,000, there's still $100,000 worth of profit. If it's worth $300,000 versus $388,000, well, then there's $200,000 worth of profit there. We can also see that there's some pictures, and so we're of course going to go through and review those. Looks to be pretty clean. We can see that it's right there on the waterway. Inside looks incredibly clean. It's got a nice spa hot tub right there on the waterway. Actually, really a pretty nice little property. Pretty good property right there. See another property with a $90,000 opening bid and a $141,000 assessed value. Click on the photo of the property and see a better image of it. We see this property was built in 1991. It's 2,300 square feet, 3 bedroom, 3 bath. Now let's take a look and see what this property is valued at. Just reading some of the questions that are coming in real quick. Okay. some different questions, some personal questions I can email you guys back about. Okay, so this property here, $359,000. Let's see, it's located right here, 2,300 square feet. Even though this is a high opening bid amount, there's still a lot of room of profit. So we just continue to scroll down. We're going to look at that information. We're going to see that, $2,500 opening bid, assessed value $29,500. We're not going to spend any time looking at these type of properties. Now, the assessed value, this property may be worth $10,000, but spending $3,000 to make a property worth $10,000, that's not what we're looking for as tax sale investors. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and click off, and we can see that this particular auction, this particular county, Lee auction, has 4 tax sales this month. So we can see that there's 11 properties, 54 properties the next week, 37 properties, and 19 properties. So there's going to be tax sales taking place all the time. So depending on where you're investing, you can take that into account. If I'm purchasing a property in California, I might be willing to go up a little bit higher on the price because it's going to take a whole year before I have a chance to purchase property in there. So if I can make a good profit on a property, then it's going to be a good investment. I might be willing to spend a little bit more. If there's 4 auctions taking place that month and there's good property in each one of these auctions, then I'm going to be a little bit more selective, and I may take a little bit less because there's going to be more opportunity. And so these are just some of the different things you're going to think about as you decide where you'd like to invest and how much you're going to spend. So let's go ahead and click on the 21st. And we can see some of these properties that are coming up. Now, this would, one would have a very low opening bid and a pretty good assessed value. We're looking at an $8,000 opening bid, $100,000 assessed value. If we're to go ahead and click on the property, we can see a photo of the property here. You can see it was built in 1983, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. And then we're going to go ahead and do a research on that property. Estimate and see what the property is estimated value. You can see it has an estimated value of $168,000. And also, do you see these red marks here? These little red or green information. This is going to be properties that are either currently for sale or have sold within this area. You can see another one right here. And so as I go down here at the bottom and click on comparable homes, these may be some of these properties that are included. And so if this property is very similar to this property, or this property is similar to this property within the same area, then it'll help me determine what the value of my property is, or the property that I'm looking at. I can do a comparative market analysis. Maybe this property is only 2,000 square feet, and this one here is 3,000 square feet. But if the properties besides this square footage are very, very similar, then I can still use this property as an example because it is recently sold, and then I would just take that in consideration when I'm doing the dollar per square foot on my property. And so let's just say that these 4 properties here, I used it as an example, and they sold anywhere between $100 to $120 per square foot. Where there's a good chance that the subject property, the property that we're researching, is going to sell within that $100 to $120 per square foot, because that's what the other properties in the area have sold for over the last 6 months or year. So overall, a great looking investment with that $8,000 opening bid. Here's another property. Now this property here, we can see that the access is undetermined. We're not going to spend a lot of time looking at that because, unless you want to go out there and tromp through some of the swamps trying to find the property, this is not what we're interested in. We're interested in properties that are easy to flip, easy to sell, easy to rent, and that could be a building lot, or that could be a commercial condominium or commercial property. That could be a single-family home. It just the important thing is that the property has value and that you're getting it for a good price. See, there's not a ton on that first page. Let's go ahead and look at the second page. Okay, the second page, we start having quite a few different properties. And you can almost tell which properties are single-family homes just by looking at them. We see an address here. We see the assessed value at $46,000 at $2,900. Just based off this, I would imagine that this is probably some type of condominium. It could be a small single-family home or a nice mobile home in a structured mobile home park. See from the street view, from the Zillow view, it's going to be right here. So it's going to be one of these condominiums right here. But what we can do is we can go ahead and click on the property records, and then we can see. So we can see that it's the condominium located right here. 2-bedroom, 2-bath, built in 1981, 884 square feet. And so in looking at an opening bid amount of $3,000, would this be a good investment? Well, yeah, it would be a great investment. You're looking at a low opening bid amount. It may not have a high assessed value, but there's still room for profit. I mean, the tax deeds that I showed you earlier today that we were investing in, these aren't high dollar tax deeds. They're valued $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. But we're able to pick them up at a good price, so there's still plenty of room for profit on these properties. We see this property has an estimated value of about $73,000. So, as a $3,000 opening bid amount or a $3,000, that opening bid price on a property that's worth anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000, that's going to be a good investment. We see a property down here below, $10,000 opening bid, has an assessed value of $191,000. Real nice single-family home. Looks to be like a custom single-family home. Let's go ahead and do a search real quick and see what the value of this property is. Okay, so we're looking at a property with a $270,000 value, and we can also see these properties right here. These are properties that are for sale or currently sold. These are properties that we can use as comparables for this property if we were going to bid at the auction on this. So $270,000 with a $10,000 opening bid, you can't really see better examples as far as nice properties for sale than these. That doesn't mean that this property is going to sell for $10,000. It may go bid up all the way to $60,000. It just depends on how many people are bidding at the auction. But you're going to have a chance of getting a very nice property at 20, 30, 40% of its value. And when you acquire real estate this way, there's just not any other avenue where you can acquire real estate. I mean, if you're talking about a mortgage foreclosure, many times the mortgage companies owe more than the property's worth. That's part of the reason it's going to the foreclosure sale, because the property owner owes more than the property's worth. So the banks, they don't want to lose any money on the property, or they've already lost so much, they don't want to lose any more. So they're not going to start the auction up at a low opening bid like this. They're going to start it out for nearly what the property is. And so unless you find some type of very, very motivated seller who's willing to sell you a property for 50, 60% of its value, which is pretty tough to find, you're not going to find a way to be able to acquire real estate at such great prices as you can through tax deeds. And with tax lien investing, you're looking at earning great interest rate returns. If you have some type of IRA account or some old 401k account from an old job or anything like that, those type of funds are perfect for investing in tax lien certificates. I tell a story about one of my family members that invested in the most conservative stocks that you possibly can buy. They put a good portion of their retirement into these stocks, and between 1999 and 2009, kind of during 9/11 and all of that happened with them, they lost half of their money in the stock market, and they were invested in some of the most conservative stocks that are available. If they were invested in tax and certificates, would they have taken a loss? No. They would have been earning 16 or 18% on their money during that time, guaranteed. And so, that's what makes tax lien investing so great, and tax deed investing as well, is when you're looking at tax lien certificates, you're earning an interest rate return, but that your collateral is against a property that's worth 90 times the amount that you paid. that's a safe investment. It's a great investment, and you know exactly what you're going to be earning. With tax deed investing, it's real estate investing, but you're starting out and you're purchasing properties at low opening bid amounts. You may bid up that property higher than the opening bid amount, but you're still looking at acquiring it for below 50% of its value. We've acquired property for 5-10% of its value. I've helped students acquire 5-10% of its value. Some nicer properties in nicer areas, investors may spend more than that. You may bid up to 30 or 40%, but as long as there's plenty of room for profit, then these are all going to be good investments. Here's a $14,000 opening bid, $239,000. Now this property looks to be like some type of large piece of land. We can see it is right here. Yeah, so this here is a large piece of land in a commercial. We can see that next to it is commercial property. If we look at this address, we'd find that this is commercial property. It looks to have storage units right here next to the site. At least that's what it looks like to me. These are probably storage units. And so this is within a commercial area. For the right type of investor, this could be a very good investment as well. If you don't want to have to worry about trying to, deal with a home or with some type of structure, this would be a great piece of land that somebody could look at. And the good thing about land is it's easier to sell. As far as you're not going to have somebody try to show the property for you. You can put a sign on the property, and you could be across the country selling it, and not have to worry about showing people through the property. And also, the people that are looking at the property are usually going to be investors, so they're going to be more invested minded. As they look at the property, they're going to look at the price, and if you're offering the property for a good price, they're going to go ahead and pick it up. Here's another property, $6,000 worth $113, $9,000 worth $105, $5,000 worth $56, $4,000 worth $20. I'm not sure, that's not quite as great, but there's going to be lots of great properties. Let me go ahead and answer a couple more questions. We've gone almost an hour over, and we'll go ahead and call it a night. Okay. Another question about what to bid on properties, and as I mentioned before, that's really just going to depend on the auction. Sometimes you're going to have to pay more for in a particular market than you will in another. The key, though, is just to set that before you attend the auction, so you understand what you're willing to pay. So when you bid at the auction and the bidding gets emotional, or as you're bidding online and the bidding gets emotional, and you might, as you start bidding at the property and somebody outbids you, you're not going to get emotionally involved. I have never had a student lose money in tax sale investing. And the only people that I've ever seen lose money in tax sale investing are for two reasons. The first reason is that they were completely uneducated. They don't have the education. You just being on the line tonight are 1,000 times more educated. I've attended auctions where I've seen people purchase on property and bid on property, just keep bidding on property. The only reason they were doing that is because somebody else was bidding on the property. So you had two people who knew nothing about the property that were getting emotionally involved and bidding against each other, bidding up the price of a piece of junk property. In fact, I told one of the, because it was a younger couple, I said, guys, this isn't a great property. Don't bid on it. Please. And I kind of begged them just not to bid on it because I'd been out and looked at the property. I knew what it was. I knew it was a drainage ditch. And, and he ended up losing the property, which was great, and he was so mad at me, he went back, and the very next property, he got in the same bidding war with this same guy, and bid it up and purchased a junk piece of land. That's a scenario where I've seen somebody lose money. And it wasn't because they were investing in tax sales, it was because they were purchasing property that had no value without doing any research, without doing any understanding of the tax sale process. They just heard about tax sale investing and how you can acquire properties for such a little price, and they just went there figuring that they could do anything. And the investor they were bidding with was known an investor who shows up to the auction every year and just bids on every property regardless of the price, just to kind of flex his muscles. And so, you know, with those were two investors that were losing money on real estate, on tax sale investing, but that's just because they didn't do any research. They didn't go in there prepared. And then also they got emotionally involved. This young couple got emotionally involved because this older gentleman was outbidding them on their investments that they wanted, but they didn't even know what the investments was. So as long as you're going through and you're doing due diligence and you're setting parameters before the auction takes place, I'm willing to go down and bid down interest rates on these tax liens to 10%. Or whatever that interest rate is. That's how far I'm willing to go. I'm not going to go any lower than that. On this property, the tax deed auction, I'm willing to bid it up to $20,000 or whatever that number is. It doesn't matter. It's just having that set amount. So when you start to feel yourself getting emotionally involved, and there's a good chance you will. You know, there's a few people that I've worked with that aren't emotionally involved or that can't get emotionally involved, but a lot of people will start to get emotionally involved. They see. You know, they want to acquire the property. It's just like bidding on eBay or any of the auction sites. People get emotionally attached to whatever they're bidding on. Ego gets involved, and they'll end up bidding up and paying more than they planned on paying. You know, that's human nature. And so realizing that beforehand, going in with a plan is going to save you every single time. You know, you're going to have a good idea of what you're willing to invest, how much you're willing to invest, what type of properties you're going to be going after, and then it's just a matter of going through, reviewing auctions, and finding an auction that you're interested in. Once you've determined an auction that you're interested in, then it's just a matter of going through, doing research on the property, figuring out which properties you're interested in, how much they're valued at, and how much are you willing to spend on them. That's the process. And so again, I want to thank you guys for coming out to the webinar.